Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I'd like to have a look at a slightly longer term chart of the NQ. This is in response to a question from one of our MTPredictor customers, so I thought I'd do a video on it so you can all see my thinking on this particular trade setup. But as usual, we start with our risk disclaimer and remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades are actually taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Remind you there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. Put another way, all professional traders know and understand, but more importantly accept that losses can and will and do unfold. It doesn't matter what trading approach you take, there always will be losing trades. Right, the question, or the trading question, was this setup here. I'm using our TradingView scripts for this particular video, but the same would be in our NinjaTrader add-ons or our standalone version. You can see there's two labels here because it's both a standard TS1 and an advanced TS1 W3. So I'm just going to hide the standard trade setup so you can just see it a bit clearer. You can see. So this was the setup that I was asked about. Now, for you guys who are new to MTPredictor, you'll know that we don't trade all the setups blindly as if it's a black box system, because the markets we know and understand that they're random basically about half the time, or slightly more than half the time. So we should only be trading when there's a clear picture. So the question arises then, was there a clear picture coming to that high? So for that, we look back to the previous high and we can see, we asked, was there a support or resistance at this particular level here? Normally we go to our higher time frame chart for our DP support and resistance zones, but in this case there wasn't any higher time frame support. So the question from one of our customers was, were there any other more advanced techniques that we can use to try and decide whether this would have been a valid high with a valid resistance level to then start our sequence? Now the answer to that is yes, because if we go back to this last move down to the low, you can see it looks like a 5-wave sequence. So if I click on our Elliott Waves tool, I'm just going to display the pivots and have a look down to this low here. So I want to analyze it down into pivot 24. Can you see that there? Down into pivot 24. So I'm just going to use this and I'm going to do it pivot number to pivot 24. Just give that a second to recalculate. And there it is. Can you see? If I do OK. Perhaps if I take the pivot numbers off now, you can just see it a little bit clearer. So this is what happened here. Can you see this? We had a, if I just make it a bit bigger, we had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we had a 5-wave decline down to that low there. So what do we know about what happens after a completed 5-wave sequence? Well, we know that the initial target is normally the DP of the prior wave 4, so off this wave 4 here. Now you can see that obviously this has been exceeded, so we won't bother to put that on. But we also know that if the DP from the prior wave 4 has been exceeded, then the market normally retraces the entire prior 5-wave sequence. In other words, this entire sequence down here. So in other words, we're anticipating that this rally here, going up off this low, is going to terminate in and around the DP of the start of the 5-wave sequence, i.e. this pivot here. So if I go back, and actually I'll just do our DPs this time. I'll place our DPs on because I want to basically place the DP off that pivot. So again, I'll display the pivots. So we want to place the DP of pivot number 5. Can you see that? That pivot there. So I'm going to do pivot number, pivot 5, and place the DP off that. I'll just take the pivot labels off so it's just a bit clearer. So that's what we anticipate the level where this rally going up here will terminate, up here. I'm just going to draw a rectangle around that to extend it out a little bit further. Just bear with me for a second. There's a rectangle. Just going to draw the rectangle around there like that, to the same level. And as you can see, if I just get that right, there we go. Just going to lock that in. So as you can see, this caught the high beautifully. So the question is then, or the original question was, whether this high here was starting at a good or sensible resistance level to then be able to get a clear picture. And as you can see, it was. It was because it was at the DP from the start of that prior 5-wave sequence going down into the low. Now the beauty of this is that this DP would have been on the chart well in advance. Once the market had made that 5-wave sequence down to the low, which we can see there, once it had gone beyond the DP from that prior wave 4, which it did around here, you could have placed this next DP on the chart, i.e. well in advance. You'd have known that that would have been the area that you were anticipating the NQ to go to. And as you can see, it did indeed, and go right up to that high where it made a high. It then started to come down. So now what can we do? We now know that this is a clear picture. The picture has become clear here. We can then start looking for sell setups because we know this is a good resistance level. Our MTP trend is agreeing with this because it was blue up into the high there. Can you see that? Turned grey to indicate a reversal at the high. The MTP trend was now red to indicate the large degree trend was down. So this would then have signaled that this would have been a good trade setup to take. So if we now place the analysis on this, from now it was one pivot back. So I'm going to do pivots back, one pivot back. No offset because the red sell bar was at the very bar of the high. Can you see that? That's the bar you'd have been triggering at. So if we place the analysis on here, we can see that this would have been a trade to take. If we increase the account size a bit, because obviously that's quite a large trade setup to take there. That's why it's saying 0 contracts. I'll just leave that at 20,000, which is our standard one. So this would probably be something to play on perhaps a larger account, or perhaps you might want to trade on the micro NQ rather than the NQ itself. But nevertheless, that would have been your entry, and this would have been your target. And as you can see, it caught the decline very nicely. The market now has just about reached that target where a profit of approximately 15 times the initial risk was available. So as you can see, it was a good trade to take, and a good example of using our MTPredictor tools on a slightly longer term chart. In this case, it was an hourly chart of the NQ. Now yes, this was a little slightly more advanced analysis because we weren't using any higher time frame support and resistance. We were using the knowledge that once the market had made a 5-wave sequence down to the low, then we could use the DP from the start of the sequence to indicate a potential support or resistance in this case level. Because the market then reversed off that level absolutely beautifully, that deems that then the picture is then clear, and then moving forward you could be looking for short trades. And as you can see, when this TS1 W3 or wave 3 sell setup came up, that was a great trade to take, and the markets then declined down into a very nice result of a profit of approximately 15 times the initial risk. So I hope this has been a good example to show using MTPredictor on slightly longer term charts and doing a bit more advanced analysis with the tools that are available. Again, in this video I've been using our TradingView scripts to do the analysis, but you can use our add-ons for NinjaTrader 8 or our standalone version as well. We have the same tools in all three versions.